Hello friends, my name is Ramasu. Today we shall discuss about the topic the collect requirement. Friend, this is a very important process in project management, and especially if you have interest in project management or you are planning to give exam of PMP in near future. So this is a very interesting and important topic for you. So let's start, friend. First of all, I would request to please subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell option as well so that my new videos can reach to you. Friend, collect requirement is the process of determining, documenting, and managing stakeholder needs and requirements to meet project objectives. The key benefit of this process is that it provides the basis for defining and managing the project scope, including the product scope. Requirement gathering is the process of exploring the requirements for a system from end users, customers, partners, and other stakeholders. Requirement gathering is about discussing with each of the stakeholders to understand their needs and expectations on the product or service you are going to create. Understanding the stakeholder expectations will help you visualize what your project is going to deliver. Almost every project starts with a very high level and bare minimum requirements. This phase is to understand the customer needs from a very high level. Later, during requirement gathering phase, you collect the requirements in detail after speaking to users, customers, and other stakeholders. Every requirement should be detailed enough to justify the criteria to meet the requirement, meaning that requirement must always be measurable. For instance, it is not enough to say the requirements as the web page loading speed must be reasonably good. In this case, after developing the system, you will not be able to verify whether you fulfill the requirement or not, because the word reasonably good is subjective and can be manifested by each stakeholder differently. So the requirement always should be subjective and must be measurable. The measurable criteria will help you to verify later whether the end system fulfills the requirement or not. Now, why project manager involved in collecting the requirements? Though business analyst will collect the requirements as a project manager, you are responsible to make sure stakeholder needs are met. So it's a good idea for the project manager to be on top of the requirements gathering process and understand both project requirements and product requirements. Many organizations will create one common requirement specification for both product and project. Certain organizations will produce two separate requirements specifications, one for the project specification, which contains the requirements for the project, such as staying within budget, timelines of the project, etc. The other is for product requirements specification, which contains the product features and functions. As a project manager, it is a good to be on top of both the project and product requirements. So now, when to perform the requirements gathering process? Friend, when to perform requirement gathering process? This question determines the essential inputs of the collect requirement process. First, you must know how you are going to collect the requirements. This information is documented in a scope management plan and requirement management plan. These documents are output to plan scope management process. You can also require project charter to determine understand the high level requirements of the project, and the project charter is an output of develop project charter process. Then to extend these requirements, you must talk to all the relevant stakeholders, so you need stakeholder management plan and stakeholder register. Stakeholder management plan is the output of the plan stakeholder management process, and the stakeholder register is an important output of identify stakeholder process. Requirement gathering or collect requirement process. So the primary output of collect requirement process is requirement documentation and requirement traceability matrix. As we learned earlier and discussed earlier, the primary inputs for collect requirement process are the outputs of plan scope management, develop project charter, plan stakeholder management process, and identify stakeholder process. Now we shall discuss about the inputs for the collect requirement process. Now what are those inputs, friend? Those inputs are, firstly, you need scope management plan and requirement management plan to understand how to perform a collect requirement process. Then project charter will help you with high level and initial requirements of the project. Stakeholder management plan will tell you how deeply stakeholders should involve during requirement gathering phase. Stakeholder register will provide the list of stakeholders you should interact with to collect the requirements. Then the next one is the tools and techniques. Tools and technique for collect requirements are requirement gathering techniques are very important, helpful to deal with variety of stakeholders. There are methods to extract requirements from the stakeholders. So a complete list of requirement gathering techniques for are also available. Then the outputs are requirement documentation document all the project functional and non-functional requirements. Functional requirements will elaborate on the features and functions of the system. Non-functional requirements are the requirements that does not talk about the system functionalities, but they determine the system quality parameters such as performance, usability, etc. Requirement traceability matrix provides traceability from the requirement ID to source of requirements, design, implementation, and test verification. You will update the requirement traceability matrix document multiple times during the project. Requirement gathering guidelines there are, like for example, make sure the project scope is clear with objectives measure instead of subjective measure. This is very important point here. Then friend, like don't blindly assume that you know what customer wants. Make sure you don't miss any stakeholder during requirement gathering process. Each requirement should smart means specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. Always validate assumptions with the stakeholders and make them concrete and certain. Make sure all stakeholders are on the same page in terms of understanding on the requirements. Requirements must be signed off by the customer side stakeholders who has authority to approve and sign off. Normally there are few mistakes happen that not considering some of the stakeholders, so you miss the requirements. You capture the requirements subjectively, they are not measurable. Assumptions are not validated and requirements are based on assumptions. These are very common mistakes. Then trying to jump to the conclusion before you understand the problem or need of a stakeholder, missing the priority of the requirements. There is principle called Moscow. Moscow means must have, should have, could have, and wouldn't have. Additional zero added to make the word pronounceable. So friend, thank you, thanks a lot for watching the video. I hope you like this video. If you like it, please share it with the friends and colleagues, and thanks a lot for watching the video. Thank you, friends.